The sun dipped low over Greenville County, painting Woodruff Road in streaks of fading gold. Inside her car, 22-year-old Katie Blauvelt lifted her phone, smiled softly, and took a selfie, the last photograph she would ever take. To anyone passing by, it looked ordinary. A young woman finishing a long shift, maybe texting a friend before heading home. But behind that still moment, something sinister was already unfolding. Somewhere nearby, a man watched, the same man she had once trusted, loved, and feared. By nightfall, Katie would vanish. Her car would be found abandoned. Her phone would go silent. And what began as a missing person call would evolve into one of South Carolina's most disturbing murder investigations. The story of Katie Blauvelt is not just about love gone wrong. It's about control, revenge, and illusion of safety within the walls we call home. Katie was born on August 8, 1994, in the small town of Mountville, South Carolina. Everyone called her Katie. She was the kind of person who made others feel lighter, a bright, unassuming warmth in a quiet community. Her siblings, Brandon and Brittany, describe her as caring, funny, and loyal, the kind of sister who remembered birthdays, showed up when you needed her, and never spoke an unkind word. In her early 20s, Katie dreamed of something bigger, a life of purpose and service. That dream began to take shape the day she met John Blauvelt, a 26-year-old Army recruiter. John was known in Simpsonville for his confidence and discipline, a man with military bearing and natural charm. He was older, persuasive, and had the kind of presence that drew people in easily. When Katie met him at a restaurant near his recruiting office, it felt like fate. He talked about duty, honor, stability, all the things she wanted to believe in. Encouraged by him, Katie enlisted in the Army in 2015, but just 2 months into basic training, a spinal condition forced her into a medical discharge. The dream ended abruptly. She returned home, disheartened. John stayed by her side, supportive, reassuring. Their bond grew fast. Within a year, they were married. Katie moved into his house in Simpsonville. She imagined the start of a peaceful future. Evenings on the couch, children someday, a life built on trust. But that's not what she walked into. The man she married began to change. John's image of discipline and control was a mask, one that slipped quickly behind closed doors. Soon, his house filled with teenagers from nearby Hillcrest High School, where he often recruited. They saw him as a cool recruiter, older, confident, willing to look the other way when it came to alcohol or drugs. The gatherings turned into all-night parties, loud music, marijuana, LSD, and Katie, once full of plans for a quiet home, now found herself surrounded by chaos she didn't sign up for. Among the teenagers who hung around was 17-year-old Hannah Thompson. Investigators would later describe her as infatuated with John, a student who followed him everywhere, devoted, obsessed. She doted on him, mimicked him, and grew openly hostile toward Katie. Friends later said Hannah hated her and made no effort to hide it. By early 2016, the tension became unbearable. Katie couldn't take the parties, the drugs, or the constant disrespect. She packed her things and left. Within weeks, Hannah had moved into John's bedroom, as if replacing Katie entirely. Then, things got darker. On February 26, 2016, Hannah's father called police. He hadn't seen his daughter in 2 weeks and was worried about her being with the much older recruiter. When officers arrived at John's home, they found Hannah there. John was arrested and charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor. That same day, Katie filed a domestic violence report. She told authorities that during an argument a month earlier, John had pointed a gun at her head. She escaped unharmed, but terrified. Her report led to an additional charge and triggered an Army investigation. John was stripped of his recruiting duties, suspended, disgraced, and furious. Investigators would later learn that from that moment on, John blamed Katie for everything. He told friends she had ruined his life and that he wanted revenge. In the months that followed, his house spiraled even further. Teenagers continued to come and go freely. According to witnesses, there were drugs, alcohol, and violence, a place of decay, not discipline. 16-year-old Ally Somerville, one of Katie's friends, would later testify that the home had become an all-day, everyday party. By October 2016, Katie and John were legally separated. She had a restraining order in place. Finally reclaiming her safety, her family said she began to smile again. She was rebuilding, talking about her future, reconnecting with friends. But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that John had already started planning her murder. Police would later find disturbing internet searches on his phone. How to sharpen a knife. What do I do when my wife dies? They weren't random. They were steps in a plan. And that plan was about to begin. October 24th, 2016. A Monday night in Simpsonville, South Carolina. The air was cool, still, the streets almost empty. At around 10:30 p.m., Katie finished her shift at Buffalo Wild Wings. She sent a quick message to her friend. "I'm off now, heading home." It was a short text, routine, harmless. But moments later, she received another message. It was from John. He told her he needed to talk, said it was urgent about their divorce. He promised it wouldn't take long. Katie hesitated. She'd kept her distance for months. Still, they had shared a home, a life. Maybe this was closure. So she agreed to meet him. She told her friend she was stopping by to talk to John for a few minutes. It was the last time anyone heard from her. Hours later, Katie's car was found near a Simpsonville church parking lot. The keys still inside. Her purse, her wallet, her phone, all there, but Katie was gone. Her family reported her missing early the next morning. Police started canvassing the area, calling friends, tracing her phone. It went straight to voicemail. Within hours, detectives zeroed in on one person, John Blauvelt. They knew about the restraining order, the domestic violence charge, the pattern of control. When officers went to his home that morning, he was gone. So was Hannah Thompson, the 17-year-old who had moved in with him. Both vanished the same night Katie did. Police now had 3 missing persons, and one connection that tied them all together. The next 48 hours were a blur of leads and dead ends. Katie's family organized search parties through wooded areas off Woodruff Road. Volunteers walked with flashlights, calling her name. Then, on October 26th, 2 days after she disappeared, a Greenville County deputy found something near East Georgia Road. It was a piece of fabric, blood-stained. Nearby, in a shallow ditch hidden by brush, they found her body. Katie had been stabbed repeatedly, at least 13 times. She had fought back, hard. The coroner ruled it a homicide. When the news reached her family, her sister Brittany collapsed to the floor. Her mother screamed. Brandon, her brother, said it felt like someone tore the world apart. Katie's father, a quiet, soft-spoken man, couldn't understand it. He kept asking the same question. Why would he do this to her? The answer, detectives said, was buried in obsession and rage. As police processed the crime scene, evidence started connecting directly back to John. Blood samples near the ditch matched his DNA. Neighbors reported seeing his gray Toyota parked near the church the night she vanished. Security footage from a nearby gas station captured him around 10:45 p.m., just minutes after Katie's last text. He appeared calm, emotionless, and alone. But after that moment, he disappeared completely. Police put out a nationwide alert, calling him armed and dangerous. He was believed to be traveling with Hannah Thompson. The FBI joined the manhunt. Days passed, then weeks. Katie's funeral drew hundreds. Her coffin, white with pink roses, was carried beneath a cloudy sky. Brandon spoke softly through tears. She didn't deserve this. She just wanted peace. But while her family mourned, her killer was on a run, crossing state lines, changing cars, growing his beard, and slipping into a life built on lies. For nearly 2 years, John Blauvelt would live as a ghost. He used fake IDs, moved through homeless shelters, and worked odd jobs under new names. Hannah stayed with him for months, before eventually leaving and turning herself in. She told police she'd been manipulated, trapped by his control. Meanwhile, John remained hidden, until one small mistake exposed him. For nearly 2 years after Katie's murder, John Blauvelt lived like a shadow. He was a former U.S. Army recruiter, trained, disciplined, and dangerous, and he used that training to vanish. At first, investigators thought he had fled the state, maybe even the country. Tips came in from Georgia, Texas, even Mexico, but every lead dissolved. Detectives described him as a man who could blend into any crowd, speak to anyone, and disappear just as easily. He'd once wore a uniform that gave him authority. Now he used that same confidence to manipulate and deceive. Back in Greenville County, the Simpsonville Police Department refused to let the case die. They kept his profile active on America's Most Wanted and U.S. Marshals bulletins. His name, photo, and crime scene description circulated through every law enforcement network. He was listed as one of South Carolina's most wanted fugitives. Meanwhile, Katie's family refused to let her story fade. Her sister Brittany kept posting his picture online with the caption, "He's still out there. Someone knows where he is." It wasn't anger that drove her anymore. It was exhaustion, the kind that only comes from grief that never ends. Then, in September 2018, nearly 2 years after the murder, the breakthrough came. A tip was called in from Oregon. Someone reported a man living under a different name in a small town near Medford. He looked older, had grown a thick beard, and told people he was a veteran trying to start over. Police ran the fingerprints. It was him, John Blauvelt, the man who killed his wife and disappeared without a trace, had been hiding in plain sight. At dawn, U.S. Marshals surrounded the small house he rented. He stepped outside wearing a hooded sweatshirt and carrying a backpack. When officers called his name, he froze. For a moment, it looked like he might run, but then he dropped to his knees, hands in the air. It was over. Inside his backpack, they found fake IDs, maps, and a small stash of cash, survival tools for a life on the run. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. As he was placed in the back of the patrol car, one officer said quietly, "You've been a long time coming." When the news reached South Carolina, Katie's family finally exhaled. For the first time in 2 years, they could grieve with a kind of closure. Brittany wrote online, "Justice is coming, Katie. You can't hide anymore." But justice would take time. John was extradited to South Carolina, booked into the Greenville County Detention Center, and charged with murder, possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and domestic violence. He pleaded not guilty, claiming the killing was an accident. But investigators had built a mountain of evidence: DNA, surveillance, witness statements, and a clear history of abuse. The trial would expose everything: his temper, his manipulation, and the years of control that led to Katie's death. And when the verdict finally came, it would seal his fate. By the time John Blauvelt was extradited back to South Carolina, the world had changed. But for Katie's family, time hadn't moved at all. Every day since October 2016 had been the same: waiting. Now, after 2 years of silence, they would finally face the man who took her life. The courtroom in Greenville was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Katie's mother sat in the front, clutching a framed photo of her daughter. When John was let in, he looked different. His beard trimmed, his hair shorter, his orange jumpsuit crisp. But his eyes were the same, blank, cold, unreadable. He didn't look at her family. Not once. The prosecution began by outlining a timeline, from the domestic violence charge that drove Katie to leave him, to the late-night messages that lured her to her death. They played surveillance footage showing John at the gas station minutes after Katie's last text. They showed the photos from the ditch where she was found. Each image, each word, built a story of calculated violence. The prosecutor said plainly, this was not a crime of passion. It was control. It was punishment. The defense tried to argue that John hadn't planned the killing. That was a fight gone wrong. But the evidence told another story. Text messages showed his threats. Friends testified to his temper. And investigators revealed that, just days before the murder, he had searched online for how to disappear after a crime. There was no remorse, only planning. After 6 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood, his voice steady. "We find the defendant guilty of murder." A murmur filled the courtroom. Katie's family held each other and cried softly. John Blauvelt was sentenced to life in prison. No possibility of parole. He showed no emotion, no apology. As he was led away, Katie's mother whispered, "Now you can't hurt anyone else." Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around the family. Brittany spoke first. "This doesn't bring her back, but at least we can finally breathe." In the years since, her family has worked to raise awareness about domestic violence, especially the kind that hides behind uniforms, charm, and smiles. Katie had once written in her journal, "I just want to be free of fear." She never got that chance. But through her story, others might. John Blauvelt remained behind bars in South Carolina, serving his life sentence. No parole, no second chance. For Katie's family, justice came late, but it came. And in that small, quiet truth, her name, Katie Blauvelt, became more than a case file. It became a warning, a reminder that love can turn deadly and freedom can cost everything.